Yo, what's going on? I'm going to show you guys my other janky deck that I built. My first deck was that combo gate, like mishmash. Again, these are low-powered junk cards that I got from the Star City Games 1,000 card lot with 100 rares, the gold version or whatever it is. Anyways, this is my second attempt to build a deck. Pretty straightforward. It's mainly a red aggro deck. So we're going to start with the early game. I got 2/1 drops, and we'll go up to 2. So obviously with, I guess, aggro decks, you want to have that dream curve of hitting 1, 2, and then 3, and then just applying that pressure. And as you guys will see, I have a lot of spells that just deal direct damage to the opposing player, so that's kind of the strategy, just go straight to face. But yeah, so we have 2 1-drops. This is the Bellows Lizard. This guy's really cool because even though he's just a 1/1 for 1 red mana, he's kind of scalable. You could really pump this up later in the mid game. You know, maybe he gets 4 or 5 damage in later on, or maybe even in the early game he gets 2, 3. Just starts applying that pressure early. Again, that's the dream start, but you know, if you do draw him late, it's not a completely dead draw, but you know, that's our 2 1-mana drops. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 2-drops. So we're really relying on that good start. We want to try and get that good start just so we can put them on edge. But this card, I like this card because it's interesting. So it's a 2 mana for 2/1, and you get to spend an extra 2 mana, and target creature gains trample. So I'm already in love with that. That's amazing. Because, you know, maybe we can push for extra damage to the face. I don't know. But the next part is really, really interesting because it says if this is the 3rd time this ability has been resolved this turn. So I guess if you use this 3 times, you may add 8 red mana to your mana pool. So I guess for your second main phase, you can potentially cast more spells. So I thought that was really cool. Otherwise, you know, if you get in the early game, just put it down, 2/1. Start going face. Next up is Scalding Devil. Again, nothing to write home about. 2 mana for 1/1, but if you do draw him late, he can apply damage directly to the player. It does cost 3 mana though, so you know, if you're teetering on like 9 mana, 10 mana, extra 3 damage, it might help. But you know, otherwise, just drop him down on 2. Next 2 are Riot Pikers. Again, just making the best with what I got. And in this case, it's just these Goblin Berserkers. They have first strike, and on top of that, you know, there's just 2 1s. They have to attack each turn if able, but I like the fact that they have first strike. Next up is Rakdos Shred-Freak. Thought this guy was kind of cool. Just 2 reds. He gets haste. It's a 2/1. So just immediately start applying pressure, 2 damage each. And then this next guy, Stingscourger. It's a 2 mana, and it's a 2/2. But when he enters the battlefield, you can return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand, which I thought was amazing. Like that's just great tempo. You know, maybe they have a blocker out that you can't get past by. Drop this down, get rid of him. He has to apply. So yeah, you get rid of his blocker, but he does have an echo cost, or an upkeep, so every time it's your upkeep you gotta pay 4 mana, which obviously this isn't really a true 2-drop because you pay that 4 mana just for a 2/2, probably not worth it. So this is mainly something that you use towards, you know, mid to late game, get something that's, you know, annoying, or maybe it's just a big creature, force them to, you know, resummon that creature. So that's kind of the point of that guy. Plated Geopede. Nothing really special about this guy. 2 mana for 1/1. Does have first strike though built in. However, he does rely on you having lands to play. So when you do play a land, he gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So effectively, it becomes a 2 mana for a 3/3 body. That's really great value, but again, it's situational. So I'm not sure how good this one is going to be. This guy is Drooling Ogre. You know, he again 2 mana for a 3/3. However, he does come with the downside. So anytime a player plays an artifact spell, that player gains control of Drooling Ogre. So that's amazing because it's kind of like a downside to balancing this, because obviously for 2 mana for 3/3, really good, but you got to balance them somehow. I guess this is passable in this kind of deck. Again, since we're going with that primitive strategy of just doing as much damage as possible, we're gonna have to utilize primitive creatures. So, you know, I thought that he was kind of cool. Plus he's an ogre, and I think I have a couple of ogres in here. I have like ogres and goblins and dragons and all kinds of good stuff. So moving on, this is the 3 mana plays. I think I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's put these aside. So it goes 2 1 mana drops, 8 2 mana, and then 5 3 mana drops. So I think that's a decent curve for an aggro. This is like semi-aggro, I guess. It's pretty reliant on the spells that I will get into, but starting off with Spin Engine. 3 mana for an artifact creature, 3/1 body. However, he does have that built-in mana effect where you spend 1 red and you can make something unblockable, or this creature can't be blocked, or it's just a target creature can't block Spin Engine. So really like that effect. Applies with the mentality of the deck, just applying that early pressure. Now Blood Ogre is probably not great value. It is 3 mana for 2/2, and it can come out as a 3/3 as long as you have dealt damage to an opponent. But he does have that built-in first strike, so again, if we just get a standard 3 mana for 3/3, I'm okay with that, and he gets the built-in first strike, but he is conditional, so it's also another ogre, so I had to throw him in there. Next up is this Crusher Zendikon. It's a different card, it's 3 mana, but you enchant one of your own lands, and it becomes a 4/2 creature with trample. And it's still a land, so it's like a land creature with an enchantment aura on it. And, you know, if it does die, you get that land, it goes back into your hand, so I guess that's, you know, I'm not sure how good this card is, but I like the fact that it has trample, so that's the main reason why it's in here. Okay. And this guy is straightforward. He's just a Reckless Brute, 3 mana for 3/1 with haste. He does come with that downside that he has to attack each turn if able, so it's kind of predictable in that fashion, but the fact that, you know, it's just a 3 mana, 3/1 with haste, potential extra 3 damage, so like that. And this one's going to throw you for a loop because it's a multicolored card. Yes, I do have some blue mana. I think I have 4 cards in the mana pool that can give a blue. So this might be stuck in your hand for a while, but if you can manage to get him down, he's going to be annoying because he's a flying creature, he's 0/2, no attack, but you can tap him and you deal 2 damage to a random target creature or player. So, you know, you can roll a dice, or you can just Google a random number between, you know, however many targets, including the player, and, you know, if you deal 2 damage to the player, that's a win, like, automatically, even if it's just 1 time, in my opinion. But otherwise, he's kind of persistent. He's going to force removal from the opponent, hopefully. But again, he has that downside where he might be stuck in your hand for a while. So that's the last of the 3 drops. That might not be a good package. I might need to go up to, you know, 6 creatures in the 3 slot. But this is our, I guess, more in-game creatures or mid-game. I have 2 4 mana creatures, and this one is Scorchwalker. First of all, really great picture. I mean, it's just a demon, just really catches your eye. But it's a 4 mana, it's an elemental, it's a 5/1, so pretty low toughness, but the main reason why it's in here is because of that discard effect, that Blood Rush. So you discard this from your hand, and you have to spend one of any color, and then 2 red manas. So, you know, 3 mana total, and you got to discard this. But you do get that immediate effect of +5 power. So that's the main reason. So if you have a creature with trample, you know, you could potentially finish the game with this. Really like this. Or even like a haste card, like this next guy. Which, again, the art is amazing. He's just like, really just, oh man, just gruesome, dude. Just an imp, like, well, he's the hench fiend of Ukor. So it's a 3 mana, 1 red, 4 mana total, 3/2 with haste, we're not playing with any swamps, so we don't have to worry about the echo effect. So essentially this guy, since we cannot pay the upkeep no matter what, he's going to die the next turn. So this guy is strictly a finisher. It's a 3-2 with haste, but he does have a pump ability where you can spend all your excess red manas, give him +1 attack. So hopefully in the end game you can probably see this guy at 6, 7, 8 attack, or 8 power plus. Thought I had to throw him in here as far as, you know, applying with our mentality of the game plan of just applying as much damage and pressure as possible, as quick as possible. So this guy is really cool because he looks like a dinosaur, but he's actually a lizard, and I thought he was like splitting this guy in half when I first saw him. I was like, whoa, but it's actually, he's just like mounted. He's losing control of his mount, which I thought is great. I mean, that's just really cool. But it's a 5 mana for 3/3 body, really bad value, but whenever Grow Tag Thrasher attacks, target creature can't block this turn. So that's really helpful if you're trying to get through, try and apply some more damage. But yeah, that's that guy. This guy, Wrecking Ogre, again, another 5 mana for a 3/3, has to do something good, right? Well, he has built-in double strike, or you can hold him in your hand, blood rush this, discard it, spend 5 mana, 3 of any color, and then 2 red. And essentially you get +3/+3 on a creature as well as double strike until end of turn. So potential game winner with this, especially if you have some like a trample effect or something. You never know what kind of, you know, combo effects we can get going on here. So thought I would throw that in there. Next up is another 5 mana for 3/3 body. So I guess that's just kind of how I roll in the 5 spot. But this guy's cool because when he dies, it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So you can just immediately go to player, you know, maybe they're sitting at like 12 life at this point, 13, 14 life, bring them down to 11, and then maybe you can just completely rely on your burn spells, which I'll get to. So really cool guy, or I guess devil, but yeah. So next up is Oni of Wild Places. This guy is another demon. Like that he has haste built in, and then of course it is 6 mana, it's a pretty hefty price, but it is 6 power. So, you know, at the beginning of your upkeep you do have to return a red creature back to your hand, so it could potentially be this, or it could be something that you're trying to save. I don't know what that would be, but you know, if the situation arises, maybe you bring something other than this back to your hand, if this survives, I mean. But, you know, that is kind of a weird upkeep. You gotta bounce a red creature to your hand. But at the same time, I like that it's just a haste 6/5, so thought I would throw him in there as well as this guy. This guy's very similar, 6 mana for 6 haste. Multicolored creatures you control have haste, so it doesn't really apply to our deck, except for that one multicolored goblin that we had that, you know, you tap it, deals 2 damage, but mainly it's just the haste with the 6 mana that I really like. So, and last but not least is this dinosaur guy, which he's a lizard, but he looks like a dinosaur, so maybe they didn't come up with a dinosaur subclass until later after this, whatever that expansion is, but he is a 6 mana for a 5/4, but you have to sacrifice an artifact in order to get that trample. So that trample is not built in necessarily, you do have to sacrifice an artifact, but this ability isn't something that you'd use just willy-nilly. I mean, you have to use it, you have to time it. We do have like, I think 4 artifacts in this deck, so, you know, I just like him, and I think he's cool, so had to throw him in there. And plus, I don't really have that many good red creatures, so I'm just making the best with what I got. And these are the burn spells. Let's put them in. Well, let's go with the. Yeah, these aren't. Okay. So these are our sorcery and instants and enchantments. So we'll get into this right here, Goblin Warpaint. This one's straightforward, 2 mana, but you get that 2/2 and haste built in. So really nice, very straightforward. Thought it was pretty decent value. And Mark for Death. This is kind of a finisher. Maybe your opponent is going wide. They have a lot of creatures. All of a sudden you can use this, mark one of their creatures, and it's forced to block this turn if able, untap that creature. Other creatures that player controls can't block. So if you have something like Trample, you can just trample that last blockable creature, and everything else can't block. So you just hopefully have something that you can deal a lot of damage with on board, so like that. Active Treason, this is kind of like a mind control effect. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn. Maybe they have a big creature, and that's their only creature. Who knows? Play this, boom, you attack with not only their creature, but whatever you got. So, really like that card, especially for 3 mana. Alright, and we're moving on into our spells that can potentially deal damage to players. So, we have 2 Glacial Rays, very straightforward card. Just deals 2 damage to target creature or player. I like that flexibility. Maybe you need to fight for that early game board control, or you can just use these as finishers for 2 mana. So, I only got 2 copies as well. Probably would have included more if I got more, but oh well. Okay, so this is Lash Out. This one is kind of similar. It is 2 mana, but this is mainly going to be used for creatures because that's the initial effect. You deal 3 damage to target creature, so you can fight for that board control. And then it has that bonus effect where you clash with an opponent, so each of you reveal a top card of your deck, and whoever wins, the winner is determined by the higher converted mana cost of that card. So you don't always win, especially since our deck isn't really too high powered as far as high mana cost cards. So you might not always win this, but if you do, maybe you get a good lucky draw or whatever, you deal 3 damage to target player. So, or to the creature's controller, which is going to be the opposition. So it's potential 2 mana for 6 damage. Most likely only going to be used for 3 damage though, but it still has a really good upside. Okay, so next is Thunderbolt. Again, straightforward card, 2 mana. You can deal 3 damage to target player, or you can deal 4 damage to target creatures with flying. I don't think I have any flyers, so it's not like I chose this for the anti-air. I strictly chose this because it can go to target player. So again, applies to our strategy of dealing damage directly. Okay, and last up we're going to finish off with 2 copies of Punish the Enemy. Very straightforward card, 3 damage to target creature and 3 damage to target player. I said that backwards, but oh well. Just cool card. Fits with the deck. 5 mana though, but we could potentially finish off, or at least contest for board control. Now, I'm going to get into the mana package first before I go into my blue cards, because that might throw you off. With I had that one goblin with the blue mana. He required 1 blue and then 1 red and then 1 of any color. So let's start with these right here. So I'm finishing off with my remaining. Well, I think I have a couple other dual lands, but even though these do come into play tapped, just having that ability to have that blue, as well as, let's see here, those are the 2 lands that can produce blue. And, oh yeah, and I also have Holdout Settlement. Usually we'll add a colorless mana to your mana pool, but you can also tap an untapped creature and then add 1 of any color. So I actually have 5 cards that can generate blue. These being artifacts, yes, you do have to spend 3 mana. However, again, we have that flexibility of getting that blue, which we're going to need for my blue spells that are draw card spells. But, this can cycle itself out. This one can turn into a 2/1 creature. I'm not sure how good that is, but, again, we need some kind of resource to get that blue, so we can play that goblin as well as our draw cards. And this is an artifact, which is just an artifact equipment. Just makes your creatures pretty much unblockable except by artifact creatures or creatures that share red. Most of my creatures are mainly red. You do have to equip it for 4 total. You have to play it in for 2 and then equip it for 2. But still, thought it was pretty applicable to the deck. Back to our lands. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So 19 basic lands, which are all my red lands that came with the Star City games. Lot. They don't really include too many lands. I was hoping for more, but whatever. Just threw all my reds into one red deck, which is this. So 19 lands does seem pretty low, but we do have these cards, well, this is also a land, so 20 lands, 22 lands, or 22 things that could give us mana. I'm not sure if that's good or not. Probably is on the lower end, but you know, make it do with what I got. So, and we'll finish off with the draw cards, because for the most part, I think a lot of aggro decks, they kind of just empty out your hand as soon as possible. And in this case, you know, I was kind of seeing this card, even though it does have a downside where you deal 1 damage to yourself if you do have a card in hand when you draw another card, but if you have no cards in hand, you draw 2 cards. Yeah, no, at the beginning of your upkeep, draw a card if you had no cards in hand at the beginning of this turn. Yeah. So at the beginning of your upkeep, and then, so I'm assuming, yeah, you get to draw 2, so. And if you had a card in hand, yeah, deal 1 damage. So, not sure how good this is, but I'm gonna try it out, see if it works out. But yeah. Plus, there's another artifact for that one dinosaur guy who needed an artifact to crush in order to gain trample. So, then we have just 4 straight up blue cards, which are all draw cards or some kind of effect where we can kind of predict and kind of manipulate how our strategy is going to go going forward. So, this one's pretty insane. Okay, we'll start off with this guy, yeah. So this is, you know, 2 mana, 1 blue. So again, all these cards do have the potential of being stuck in your hand because we're waiting for that blue mana, but when you do pop this off, you draw 2 cards immediately, straight up. That's a really good value for 2 mana. You do give the opposition 2 cards, but because we're having that strategy of just dumping our hand, trying to essentially race the opposition to, you know, deal as much damage as possible, it doesn't really matter that they get the 2 cards. Hopefully it doesn't matter. It might matter. It might be a big mistake, but at the same time, at least what I'm seeing as far as the game plan of this deck, this could potentially help us. If we are just like, we got nothing, play that, immediately get 2 cards. So next up is Ty Gam's Scheming. Really like this card because you look at the top 5 cards of your deck, so you can really plan your strategy. If you don't like some of them, you just throw them in your graveyard and then you put the rest back on top of your deck in any order. So that's amazing because we can kind of foresee the future a little bit, and we can maybe, you know, pinpoint, you know, maybe I want this spell over this creature in this order, and we can say, alright, you know what, that's my go-to line, I play that, and hopefully I have a better chance of winning. So that kind of knowledge is pretty powerful. This card, Foresee, which is scry 4, so it's not 5 cards, but you do look at the top 4 cards of your deck, and you can put any of them on the bottom of your deck, rest on top in any order, and then draw 2 cards. So you put them in order first, and then you draw 2 cards. Again, having that knowledge, very, very helpful. Plus, drawing cards is just really great, especially if you're fizzling out. Maybe they are controlling you a little bit, they're denying your strategy of doing as much damage, so you need to refill, okay? And this card is the ultimate refiller because, of course, it is 5 mana, but you're guaranteed to get 3 cards, okay? You do have to reveal the first 3, but you put your position, your opponent in a weird position because do they give you those... Hey, sorry about that. But yeah, like I was saying, do they give you those 3 cards, or do they let you draw 5? So if they really see something that they don't like, and they force you to discard those cards, then you get 5 cards. It's like a win-win. So, in my opinion, this one's insane. But yeah, that's the end of the draw package right there. So yeah, let's get into the sideboard. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, good. Alright, first off is Panic Spellbomb. This one is one of those low cost artifacts for 1 mana, but you tap this and the target cannot block, but you have to sacrifice this. So when it goes to the graveyard, you can pay 1 red and draw a card, so it essentially just refills itself. Pretty nice. This right here is Shatter, destroy 2 artifacts. If I'm going against an artifact heavy deck, I think that would be pretty nice. Torch Fiend, again, you know, another anti-artifact, you know, just card. If I need to switch it in here, maybe there's an artifact strategy or a deck that I build using artifacts. Chances are probably not not until I get a lot more like decent artifacts, but you know, just to throw it in here just in case you know, that does come about. But remove soul, counter target creature spell. This is the only blue in here, but I think that effect is really nice because you can just save this for like a big creature that your opponent's about to play, and you know, just boom, use this instant, counters that creature. So it's pretty nice. Street Spasm. This one's more of a control card because, first of all, it's a dynamic mana cost. It deals X damage to target creature without flying you don't control. That's if you do it individually, but if you overload it, would you have to pay double? Like, you just have to pay a lot of mana in order to do, let's say 3 damage. You have to pay what, 8 mana just to do 3 damage to each enemy creature that you don't control that doesn't have flying. So I don't know, it seems like kind of a situational card, a play from behind card, and this deck is all about, you know, trying to race to the face. So I'm not sure how good this is, but threw it in the sideboard just in case. So next up is a pretty decent card. This one's called Giant Baiting, but it's 3 mana, and you get a 4/4 with haste, and you remove it from the game at the end of the turn. It's a 4/4 creature token. And you can Conspire, which you may tap 2 untapped red creatures in this case, because we don't have any green, and you tap those 2 untapped creatures that share color with this, and you can make a copy of this. So potentially you can do an 8/8, well, I mean 2 4/4s with haste, but at the same time, like, I don't know, I don't like the fact that this is a one-trick pony. Maybe if we needed more reach, this would be good, but I'd rather have the creatures that would stay on the board if, you know, after they do their haste, and then, you know, they can have a board presence afterwards. So not 100% sure on this, but still included in there. Next 3 are just Ogre Resistors. Again, really like the Ogres, think they're kind of cool. This right here is just, I don't know why, I just like them, including like 3 of them. I think this is all that I have of the Ogre Resistors. It's just a 4/3 for 4 mana. Very vanilla, very basic, but, you know, it's more mid-rangey. So next up is Flux Charger. This one's interesting because it's flying, so you can let it just sit there. It does have 5 health, and then all of a sudden, when you do cast an instant or a sorcery spell, you switch the attack, the toughness and the power, so it's a 5/1, and then it has flying, so, you know, could potentially deal some decent damage. However, I only wanted 1 card, which is that Goblin that, you know, you tap and it deals 2 damage to a random target. I only wanted that one to be in there because I don't want to have too many of these where it might stick in your hand for a while. So if I find on my playtest and just swap this one out for that, or, you know, I might play with both of them, I'm not sure. But at the same time, I don't want to, you know, have too many creatures that require blue mana because we only have those 5 cards that can give us blue mana. So if I remember correctly. Okay, so next up is Tin Street Market. It is a 5 mana cost. It's an enchant land, and it's essentially, you know, discard. You know, you tap your land and you discard your card, discard a card, most likely just a garbage card that you don't need, and then draw another card. So seems pretty useful if I need another draw engine, but I don't mind relying on those blue spells to get draw. Even if we do hold it in our hand, because once those blue spells hit, boy, do they, I mean, you're drawing like 3 cards or whatever, you're scrying. You know, it's really nice with those blue card draws, so put it in the sideboard for now, just in case. Now this right here is Firemaw Kavu, I don't know, 6 mana, 4/2, really bad for stats, but it does have a really nice effect. So once it comes into play, immediate 2 damage to target creature, and then once it dies, you get 4 damage to target creature, or I guess if it's also exiled as well. So if it leaves play, it does 4 damage to target creature. Really strong card, just from the effect alone, because you can potentially do a 2-for-1. However, there is that big echo cost, so you have to pay 6 mana every upkeep in order to keep this on the field after. So you could just play this, deal 2 damage, and then not pay the echo, and then deal another 4 damage to another creature if you wanted to. That's a 6 mana play. But I don't know, it feels kind of weird. Doesn't really seem to fit in our deck because we're all about trying to do damage to the opposition instead of like controlling the board. I mean, we are controlling the board, but at this time, at 6 mana, we want to have the board to our own and then start finishing them off at this point. So, not really sure how good this one is, but, you know, put in the sideboard. Thunderous Wrath. This is an insane card if you can Miracle it, because it's a 6 mana cost, but you can Miracle it if you draw this as your first card for the turn. So, you know, you draw it, bam, pay 1 mana, 1 red, deal 5 damage to target player, or creature, but most likely player. So, really cool card. Love the graphics, by the way. But it might not be the first card that you draw. So, right then and there, even though it's a really great card for 5 damage to the player, it's unlikely, because we have all those draw cards, remember, where, you know, we can draw multiple times. So, it's not always 100% that we're going to get that miracle. It's still a great candidate to put in the deck, though. I mean, like, even regardless, even at 6 mana, 5 damage to a player, just to finish them off, seems really good, so. And then last is another hybrid card. 6 mana, though, but it requires 1 blue, 1 red. This is another draw card, so you draw 3 cards. Well, first you have to choose a target creature or player, so that is a key choice in this card. You have to choose before you draw the cards. So, you choose your target or player, creature or player, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. And that card that you discarded, whatever that converted mana cost of that discarded card, Blasted Genius deals that much damage, whatever the mana cost. So if you discard, let's say, like, you know, you draw 3 cards first, pick this, discard it, it's dealing 6 damage to either the player or the creature. So really, really cool. You draw and you do damage, seems like a win-win. However, again, I'm not sure how taxing, you know, having blue cards in this red deck is. So first got to experiment. But, you know, this is a great candidate to be thrown in there, especially with this. Just fling spells to the enemy face, just deal as much damage as you possibly can, get them to low. But yeah, that's the sideboard strategy for now. Just making do with, making the best with what I got. Even with, you know, these decks right here, so these side decks. So yeah, just another plastic bag, jank deck, nothing special. And this is my take on aggro with the Star City Games Gold Collection, the assorted card lot, 1,000 card lot. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Take it easy.